Welcome to Shakti's Gift, a podcast about creating a unique way of living. I'm your host, Marigol Era, Ayurvedic wellness coach, unschooling mother, and creative force. I think that life is a tapestry of all our stories, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, and everything in between. So in this podcast, I want to invite you to unleash your creativity and unveil yourself, your true self, so that we make this world a better place to live in. So grab yourself something to drink, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive deep into what the hell does it mean to be a human in this modern age and time. Welcome to Shakti's Gift. This week, I'm presenting you an interview that I did a while back with one of my friends, Julieta Duvall. We met a few years ago when we were both in the program regarding unschooling. So she's an unschooler as well. And the reason I want to share this interview with you this week is because this unschooling lifestyle is truly connected with creating, because every day as unschooler we're creating something, whether it's a space for our kids to learn, or it can be anything, like creating new pathways in our kids' brains, creating new environment, creating new activities. It's always about like creating a project with our kids and helping them get to know who they are so that they can evolve in the world as someone with authenticity and integrity. And so unschooling is just the extent of living a creative life. It's always fun to talk with Julieta. I was actually on her podcast at one point. I'm gonna link the video in the description. You'll see it was like one of my first time being interviewed and even like recording something. So but it was so fun to actually do that with her. So this time around we had a lot of fun talking about unschooling, and Julieta just started coaching people with the human design modality. So we talked about that and how the human design can actually help us as parents, whether you're unschooler or not, it doesn't matter. Human design can be a great tool to understand who is your kid and how you can actually help them, and how you can actually help yourself as well to know yourself better and guide yourself into the stuff that makes actual sense for you. So yeah, so I hope you guys have fun in this interview. We sure did. And I'm gonna just leave you to the interview. Enjoy and talk to you soon. All right.
Hey,
Hi. Thank you so
hello.
much, Julieta, to be here with me today on Shakti's Gift.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So we know each other since like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, like a few years
Few
now.
years now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we met in the unschooling program that Dana Martin was giving.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you want to talk about your journey with unschooling? Where were you before you started this journey?
Oh my goodness. I think if I had to give you a definition, I was kind of like a tiger mom
Mm.
almost. You know, my son, to give you an idea of what that was, my son was in Chinese lessons since he was 10 months old up until like 6 or 7. Now, why on earth I wanted him to learn Chinese is because I wanted to learn Chinese. I have wanted to learn Chinese my whole life.
Mm.
So I thought, and I know the complexity of the language. So I'm like, well, if you can start early, like when you're hearing those tones, from a baby, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? But obviously my son didn't have a choice there. So that's kind of like where I was. And then, pandemic hit. We were technically pandemic homeschoolers. I had looked into homeschooling about 2019, right before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't sure. But then, things shifted. So we just kind of were like, well, let's just try it for a year. And it was great in terms of for me. And here is the key word for me. I thought it was great for me. And my son here is just doing what I'm saying that he needs to be doing. And then at one point he was like, no, I bought a ton of curriculum, spent a whole bunch of money in buying curriculum. It was the best part. They were like, it was like Christmas morning every time they came, right? And I loved it, but it wasn't really what he was needing. And it
Mm,
was really causing friction between us, because I had a schedule. I had made up a schedule. We had park days and certain, days. We had activities, and I wasn't asking if that's what he wanted to do, if that's how he
mm-hmm.
wanted to spend his time. And I wasn't really checking in with myself either,
Yeah.
because I was doing what I thought I should be doing as a homeschool parent. If
Mm,
that makes sense?
yeah.
So I was doing it all from an outside stimuli, like what people thought that I should be doing, that's what I was doing.
Mm,
So I was doing both. I was bypassing my own intuition, and I was bypassing my son's desire to do or to
mm,
pursue something else.
yeah.
And I finally got a wake-up call in terms of, like, I don't know, someday I read something, and I read about unschooling, and I'm like, this is what we need to be doing. And and then that led me to the path, and just kind of grow from one place to another, because it was a little scary to think about unschooling, because I think I was doing very authoritarian stuff, and then to go to the other extreme, it felt really scary for me. And it
Mm,
felt like I needed to do that, to go to the you don't have to do anything that I say, and finding that middle ground, learning, recognizing that I too was like, I couldn't just give give the authoritarian stuff back to them.
mm,
It was just a learning process, it was a journey. So
yeah.
yeah,
It
that
is
was
it is such a journey. It is such a
hmm
journey.
hmm
And like I recognize myself too when you're still in that school mindset
yes,
and you just want to like still do stuff and like
yes,
impose stuff because that's how you got to learn, and so this is the
yes.
way we all learn in a way, you know.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was so powerful there. I mean, it was so there because I came from that. I mean, I didn't know any better.
Mm,
I felt like I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know how. I didn't
mm-hmm.
know how to do it. And I'm like, okay. So learning about unschooling was a huge opening, a huge door into worlds that I knew nothing about. Um, yeah. And we've been doing it ever since. So yeah.
So it's been like 4 years.
So it's been, yeah, I mean, 3 years, I think I joined Dana's program in 2021. And even
Yes.
before going, like adopting, the term unschooling,
Yeah.
before that, I did started a blog that had a name, Homeschooling with a Twist, because
Mm,
I knew even from the very early days, I knew that I learned stuff right away that I wish I had known prior to even deciding to homeschool. I knew that I wanted to share that. And then when I started unschooling and the process and the program with Dana, then it was just like 1,000 miles per hour. Like the clicks, like the aha moments were like, here, there, and they were just like a lot. I'm like, oh yeah, I have to share this. So yeah, so it was kind of like a journey, and then like sharing that at the same time. So
yeah. What would you say was your biggest breakthrough in like your early journey in unschooling and maybe even in Dana's program?
oh, Marigold, that's such a great question. I think one of the biggest one was when I had a coaching call with Dana about Spanish. So I'm from Mexico, and I grew up speaking Spanish. Spanish was my first language. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the boys to learn Spanish because it has helped me as a person in my career, right?
Yeah.
Also speak Portuguese. So languages are a big part of my life. I mean,
Mm.
hence I wanted my son to learn Chinese. But I was having trouble with as my son got older, our conversations got more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I knew the vocabulary in Spanish, it didn't feel natural to have those conversations in Spanish.
Mm,
So I was debating with myself whether I should keep pushing for the Spanish.
mm-hmm.
And because it was at one point, prior to this, that if my son didn't speak to me in Spanish, I wouldn't answer.
Mm.
Like that's how like rude I was. I'm like, if he didn't ask me in Spanish, I wouldn't answer. I didn't answer. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Like literally, I got goosebumps because I'm like, like that's so rude, Julieta. It's so disrespectful if someone
Mm.
doesn't, if he didn't have the language, the vocabulary to do it. So I was chit-chatting, like I was like going on Dana. And Dana said, well, does he want to learn Spanish? And I'm like, well, of course he does, but yeah, I mean, like, I was like so offended. But at the same time, I was like, I didn't ask him. He never had a choice. And he
Mm-mm.
does want to learn Spanish. But we have had those conversations about, now how to go about it, how to go about having a good relationship with the culture, with the language.
Mm.
Because if I push the language, I knew there would be a time where he wouldn't have a good relationship because I pushed
Yeah.
it. So I would take that away from him. So that was kind of like that was a big breakthrough in terms of respecting their choices,
Mm. I love that.
respecting their choices, and also checking myself why I wanted to do that. Because the reason why I was pushing for that is because I would feel ashamed, or I would feel
Mm.
something going to Mexico and having my relatives or someone saying they don't speak Spanish.
Mm.
And that would be about me, right?
Yeah. I love that.
So so I was like it really put me like it was almost like a shock moment. I was in
Yeah.
shock for a little while because I kept pondering on that. What else am I doing to him? But that in reality, it is about how it makes me feel and look to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And from that breakthrough, that was like different stuff. But I think that was probably one of the biggest moments that kind of caused me to pause. Like literally,
Mm.
I was like at a standstill for a while there because I was like pondering on that. And I kept going back to it. And I'm like, oh, so I think that was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs. And then, different stuff came along. So
I love
yeah.
that. I love that. And it's like, it's such a journey to understand how our kids are learning. Like,
Hmm.
I relate to that story. For me, it was English because we're speaking French.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so important that my kids are talking English because we're living in a society that, like, if you're just speaking French, you might as well just stay in Quebec and or
Hmm.
France or but like there's
Hmm.
not like and my daughter's biological father is from the States, and so I was like, this is very important for you guys to learn
To
English.
learn
And
it. Yeah.
I was forcing them to
Yeah.
watch movie in English, and
Yes.
they didn't enjoy that. And then I was
Hmm.
like, well, like I was coming from my own like
Yeah.
experience. For me, I learned English from watching TVs and
Yeah.
movies and all of that. And so I was like, this is how I learn. And so like
This is how you
naturally
should
I'm
learn it.
gonna well, not
Hmm.
even like this is how you're gonna learn it, but like this is how I learn it, and I'm not like expanding like that you might be different. And
Yes.
so and so it's like when you realize that your kids are learning in a different way that you
Hmm.
are and that
Hmm.
maybe society is, it's like
Hmm.
it's something else. And since we're here and we're in an English community, my youngest daughter, like in a year, she's bilingual
Yes.
all of a sudden. Like she
Hmm.
was fighting me over like watching freaking TV in English, and now all she does is speaking in English, and all her friends are like from like this English community. And so
Yes.
it just like clicked for her by being in this environment. It was
Yes.
it was so different than the way that I've learned it and the way
Hmm.
my oldest daughter learned it. And it's like we're all different and we all
We're
learn.
all different.
Yeah. And it's so easy for us as parents to just act on the trigger like you did
Oh
with
yeah.
Spanish. And we we just think we know better somehow.
Oh yeah. And you know, in all honesty, it's like the knowing better, it's like the experience because it has worked for you. So all of a sudden that experience that worked for you becomes the knowledge that you're building upon,
Yeah.
from. So that's like that's my knowing better. I knew learning speaking more than one language would help me, but I'm like, is that what he wants? Is that what he needs in that particular moment? Not saying that he's not going to do it, because when we travel to Mexico, it opens up. And that's the thing about language too.
Mm-mm.
Language acquisition, it is from the environment.
It is.
And there are so many studies that say language acquisition doesn't really come from a hierarchical perspective in terms of like a teacher and a student, but rather from their peers.
Yeah.
It comes from that interaction with our peers.
Yeah.
So me having the Spanish is helpful at home. Of course it is, but it really isn't what's going to solidify their language, their relationship with the language and their fluency that will carry them into perhaps when they live in Mexico,
Yeah.
or it's just by being there that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
the
true.
yeah, so now it's just about enjoying the culture, and we enjoy the food and my parents and all of that. And yeah, so it was a big moment, big moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I guess it
Yeah.
had like so many ripple effect when you have like this kind of major breakthrough and
Mm-hmm.
then it just opens up all
It
the
did.
other area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my
Hmm.
God, I'm forcing them to eat that and I'm forcing them to
Yes.
go to sleep at this time and I'm forcing them to wear
Yes.
that and I'm like all of that. It's like I remember when my girls were really small and they wanted to go outside without their clothes and we're living in like a very
The
cold
winter.
in the winter and it's really cold. It's minus 30 outside
Yes.
and like it's like
No, I feel you on the clothes because we do that a lot too here. We live in Michigan. So I
yeah,
finally learned. So, and it's just once you do that, I'm like, I do know that having a sweater would be better, but it is their own journey into learning that having a sweater will help them. So
yeah,
I take the sweater with me. And then when they're ready for it, I'm like, here's your sweater if you want it. And that's
yeah,
it. I'm
yeah,
like, but I'm not fighting that battle anymore because it really isn't a battle. It's their own journey.
yeah.
It's their own journey. That's it.
And then like from what I experienced and what I've observed, it's like when we take the control away,
Hmm.
we take away also the tantrum and like the
Yes.
like the bacon crisis like that you can see like sometimes kids do in a grocery and they're just like
Yes.
like
Yes.
the devil is coming out of them. It's like I want my freedom, they're
Exactly.
screaming. And so it's like
Hmm.
being prepared. Like I do the same thing with my kids. So you want to go outside with your shoes, there's snow. You go ahead and try it and just like try it. Do you
And then
enjoy
come.
that? Do you like is it cool for
Yes.
you? And if it is, go ahead. And like the other day my youngest daughter, she went outside. She thought it was like spring all of a sudden and she was like, "Yeah, I'm
Oh,
dressing up as like it's springtime." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then she came back and I was like, "So, did you enjoy your time outside?" And she was like, "No, it was so cold."
it was so cold. And that's all you can do. It's just
Exactly.
like support the learning experience and facilitate it in a safe, in a safe environment for them to
Yeah.
be okay with making the mistake and realizing that they needed something else. So, and then you just move on. But yeah, those battles, I fought them at the beginning because
Yeah.
that's the way I thought I should be doing it, but it was just not, it was just
It's
not,
it's
yeah,
like parenting just becomes a struggle
a
and you're
struggle.
every day. Like, I mean, you cannot
Hmm.
escape from being a parent. You're a parent. Like, you live with them 24/7. I mean, like,
Yes.
maybe you work or maybe you're out of
Hmm.
the house without them, but still, like, you're. pretty often with your kids.
Yes, you're there all the time. So I just, but yeah, we fought those battles. Like I said, I was
Mhm.
working from what people said that I should be doing, in terms of the routines and all that stuff, so I operated from that. And
Mhm.
then as we went deeper into our own schooling journey, I started listening to myself more and also started to listen to them and
Mm.
finding that, that middle ground for everyone to have their needs met.
Yeah.
And that's
And
the way we approach life nowadays.
yeah, and that's like I remember like at the beginning of your journey, and I remember this ascension of like freedom and just like understanding who
Hmm.
you are and who your kids are. And it's just
Hmm.
like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it led you to like a spiritual awakening
Oh,
almost.
yes.
Like it's just like
Yes.
I remember seeing you starting to do stuff that like you weren't like used to do, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like I remember seeing your videos about like cacao ceremony, and like, and then
Yes.
you got like into human design and like yoga and all of that, and it just like led you to some place very different. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I love to. And it really was, I wrote a blog post not too long ago about your kids being your greatest cosmic teachers.
Mm-hmm.
There was a video that sparked that post, and it really was like that because without them, they came in to check me in and say, Lady, you need to do some work. And I was like, okay. And I think I've said this before where I really wasn't ready to do the work, but I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to live this lifestyle, I had to do it because
Mm,
then otherwise, you and I talked about this, that you could do more damage
yeah.
if those triggers are go unchecked,
Mm-hmm.
because you're putting that on them.
Yeah.
So through that, so I think I learned about human design from Ilka and from Liv. They kept talking about it. I'm like, well, what is that? So I went to human design, I got our charts, and it really changed our lives.
Mm,
Like for it changed her life so much that I went deeper into taking a course, and now I'm doing human design readings because I find it such a beautiful tool to navigate life and to
mm,
make decisions and to be aware of how your own energy interacts with the rest of your family, especially that mother child or that family relationship with children.
yeah.
Um, because when their children are in the purest, they're in alignment all the time. Like when they're children, when we are children, we are born in alignment
Mm-mm.
and we know what we want, and we don't always know how to get it because we don't have the tools to communicate or something, but we are in alignment. And then it slowly gets taken out of us because we have to do what's acceptable for, to be within the environment that we're placed in.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was like a spiritual awakening in the terms, I had another friend that came into my life who does a high energy 70 energy healing, and she opened doors to a world that I was completely, maybe not completely like not aware of it, but I wasn't, like it wasn't something I knew much about. And
Mm-hmm.
she helped me navigate through the knowledge and different concepts like starseed children, living in alignment, and different solar flares, how that affects you and how that affects your children. And
Mm-hmm.
then human design, that's probably the biggest piece that I use nowadays. Cacao was such a beautiful experience because I kept having that vision of doing it, and I did it. And it was just such a connection, reconnecting back to myself and my roots,
Mm.
and knowing where I came from, and knowing, what's important and stuff like that. And I mean, it just keeps unfolding, really. It
Yeah.
keeps unfolding. So
That is
it's
so beautiful. It just blew me away the way you evolve.
mhm. Yeah.
through unschooling, like with
Yes.
that unschooling lifestyle. And it did the same for me. Like
Yeah.
for me, it was very much a lifestyle of like
Hmm.
reconnecting with myself,
Yeah.
reconnecting with those beings that are like coming through me.
Yeah.
they're just
Literally.
they're
Yes.
just
Hmm.
coming through me. And
Yeah.
with my first one, it was very easy at the beginning. It was so easy that like for me it was like the most natural thing was to unschool her and not to like put her into daycare and kindergarten and all of that. And
Yes.
it was just so much easier to just stay connected with this being and
Mhm.
keep on learning who the hell is she.
Yes.
Like who is it, like who came through me, like
Yes.
like what is she here to do. And then to let her evolve as much as I can. Like, I mean, like we're never perfect and I had
No.
triggers. And
Hmm.
it's funny because now she's 12 and we can talk openly. And
Yes.
she has all of those issues, even though like, I thought that I was gonna be like letting her like staying in alignment and all of that. And
Hmm.
it's such a journey of healing ourselves to let them go through their process without like being attached to the result.
Yes.
And like I remember at the beginning of my journey, I thought that I was gonna like not not let like not lead them to perfection, but I was like, oh my god, they're gonna be so aligned. Like she's gonna be so aligned in herself, and like she won't have the struggle of like finding who the hell she is, like because she will have that. But yeah, I was like I was not fooling myself, but I wasn't fully aware of
Yes.
like the full like human experience. I And so yeah, so it's so funny to just like see them unfold their own life and go
Yes.
through their own issues, and to still be there with them, for them, to help them cross those milestones of their own. Like
Yes.
it doesn't have anything to do really with me. She's going through her stuff,
Mm.
even though I provided like a really cool space for her. And it is such a journey of self-healing
Yes.
and not getting attached to their result.
Yes, it's so powerful what you said, but because the results are often what really gives people fear and doubt,
Mm, yeah,
because in the beginning, they're like, will my kid be successful? Will my child,
yeah,
go to college? Or, and honesty, like you cannot predict the future, but I
never.
think you can never go wrong with prioritizing connection over over someone else's feelings, like, or someone else's result, or uh thoughts about who you are as a person. So you
Yeah,
can never really go wrong with that, and it will be different though. But yes, and not not like keeping the result as your conditioning to why or why not you should do this. Then
yeah,
that, I mean, that's just so powerful because it releases all of the expectations.
yeah. And then
So,
for the kids, it's like, from what I understand, like my oldest is 12, so we're not like done with all of that. But I
hmm.
mean, I mean, like from what I understand, from what I've seen, it's like this connection, like when it's nourished, it's beautiful to actually see her go through her stuff, knowing
Yes.
that we are here. So if she needs it, not to
Yes.
impose that, but if she needs it. And lately she decided that she
Right.
needed help like outside them,
Outside
the
your own
nest.
circle. Yes. Hmm.
And so she needed that, and she had the space to say that. And
Yes.
so we were like, perfect, like we can help you this far, and if you need to go further in another direction even, like
Yes.
let's help you like search for that and find whatever would help you go through those blocks of yours.
Exactly. I mean, and what a beautiful, knowing from your child, from your, that they have that your home, that it's a safe space to ask for help, because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just to
Yeah,
ask for help, and then knowing that you're going to facilitate that. And I
yeah,
really, in unschooling, to me, it's all about that. It's just about facilitating, finding how to how to support them, and them being able to understand or to know that you are, their safe space for them to come, to you,
Yeah.
and then just ask the questions, whatever those may be. And if it's uncomfortable, then I get to check on myself, but I get to check on that for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I did tapping. I, in the journey, tapping was very important to me
Mm.
because I was able to heal some stuff with my parents. And it
Mm.
allowed me to be a complete different person. And my parents were never bad.
Yeah.
They just did what they could with what with what they had, right? But I was able to change that and to shift that to be able to have more expansion,
Yeah.
and I just love that. I mean, without unschooling, human design would have never had happened, cacao would have never happened. And now it's just open, it just feels so open. I
Yeah.
guess that's the only way I could describe our life, but human design definitely like has taken a different journey for me in terms of I went deeper. I continue to go deeper every day.
Mm-mm.
Um because it really allowed me to see how I interact with them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest piece, like how I affect them with my own emotions, because I have a defined solar plexus. I have an emotional, I'm a manifesting generator with an emotional authority, and I'm a 4/6 in my profile. But the emotional part of it, oh, Marigold, I mean, my emotions, I mean, honestly, my emotions are sometimes my greatest strength, but also they could be my biggest
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
So knowing that my emotions, because both my children have an open solar plexus,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that my emotions affect them and that they could stay in that emotional, usually would be an emotional low,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that they can stay in that emotional low a little bit longer because of
Mm.
that, then that has really, really shaped me into how, like, I'm constantly aware of that, right? Because, and if I have an emotional low, which is inevitable sometimes, then I just have to be aware to tell them that what they're feeling, maybe what's going on in our house, the energy, it's not theirs, that
Yeah.
energy, it's mine, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been pretty cool though. I
Yeah.
wouldn't change it for the world for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love how you're mixing human design and family life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I first encounter human design, I'm not like I didn't study that. I am not like a professional or anything, but I have like a few books and
Mm-hmm.
I just read a lot about like what's going on, and I did the charts of all my families
Mm-hmm.
and to understand like I have both my daughters are projectors as
Oh
I
wow.
am, and so we're like really like together, and my husband and his daughter are both manifesting generator,
Yes.
and they both have an emotional authority.
Okay.
And my youngest daughter has this she's like an emotional projector. And so
Okay.
to teach her, because like my husband and his daughter, like I'm not like getting involved too much in that, like if they don't ask me. But
Yes.
with my youngest daughter, like we're really close together, and so when she has those big huge emotion,
Mm-hmm.
it's like to understand that this is her authority, and when she makes decision like in the peak of the emotion, like it's just not gonna work. And so to be
Yes.
able to teach that to her and to be able to just like stay there with her while she's going through this, and to help her just like ride this wave, surf it,
Yes.
surf
Mm-hmm.
the wave. And then after it's done, then we can sit together, talk, and make a decision.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It is like, I mean, it's such a beautiful thing to see it work when you're a child, like that. And I didn't know that. I'd make decisions in the emotional way so many times, and I always regret it, and I'm like, and it's so dramatic. It's so dramatic, and then it affects people. It affects people, and I'm like, and now that I'm out of the emotional wave, I'm like, oh, sorry. It's really terrible. Both my boys have a sacral authority. So I'm grateful for that. My husband has an emotional authority, but my emotions, I mean, it's been almost the biggest learning for me,
Mm,
to be able to wait, and to not jump into the situations that will lead to burnout sometimes,
mhm,
and now I know, but I have been in pretty uncomfortable situations based on making decisions from an emotional wave. It never ends well. That's all I have to say about that. So I mean, if you don't know, like if anyone that's watching, like if you don't know anything about human design, I think I did a video about that. That is probably the biggest piece that I would even ask, do I have an emotional defined solar plexus or not? And then the if you have an emotional authority, because
mm,
it's so crucial, and a lot of people like, it's kind of a mystical way of seeing things. It
mm.
happened in Ibiza, Spain. It was a spiritual awakening for him. It came out of, like, he calls it the voice, and it's so very mystical.
Yeah,
It's so very mystical, but at the same time, that's why I like about I think most of the people that do human design approach it the same way. Like, take what resonates and leave the rest. If it
yeah,
doesn't feel right, then it's just not right. And
yeah.
that's how I like to share with people, because it's just a decision, a tool to help you make decisions. And
Mm,
then you get to experiment with it, and then you get to see that in your children, once you know their types and whatnot. And then you get to, like, oh yeah, this works and this doesn't. And then you move away from what doesn't work.
yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
What struck me the most with human design was the precision and like
Hmm.
all the information that were like putting together in this chart, and it was like, oh my god, this is like there's so much information, like it's so full, complete, it's like we
Yes.
have like so much to play with. And I know that I think you're playing with Gene Key as well.
Yes. Yes,
So
I learned about Gene Keys from you, I think,
yeah, I think
because I
so.
think when you and I did our first interview, we talked about shadow work.
Yeah.
And then I think when I asked you what you were into, right, at that time you were diving into Gene Keys,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. This is like, oh my god, this is delicious. I love Richard Rudd. It's just like the way he embodies his masculine energy is like, oh my god, he's like divine. He's like so calm, so
Yes.
peaceful, so like connected, like to
Yes.
higher stuff. He's like, oh my god, I just love his energy and the way he provided this information.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very very precise, and like the
Yes.
way of like dealing with our shadows with Gene Keys, it's like it's just so precise that you get
Yes.
to understand in a very deep way where does it come from, how to heal it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
to move like even
Had
further
to
than just
move.
healing. So yeah, so I really enjoyed those two tools together to
Yes.
understand like our life purpose
Yes.
and our relationship together as well.
Yes.
So like I remember with my husband, which is a manifesting generator, and I'm a projector, so we really like we don't operate the same
Yeah. Yes.
way, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same level of energy. And like at one
Yes.
point, like in our relationship, we were like fighting
Mm-hmm.
each other, and I was like trying to understand like why the
Why?
fuck can I just like not follow him in all of whatever he wants to do.
Yes.
And
because you're not meant to.
I know. So when I found out about human design, I was like relief. I was like, oh my God, this explains everything that
Yes,
went through in my life, the whole shebang,
exactly.
right? I know it did that for you, right?
Yes, because it's funny because human design, even though it's a tool to make decisions, it has served, I think it serves the first, almost like a first, the first block or a foundation from the foundation knowledge. It's about making sense of your past experiences.
Yeah.
And as you start making sense of those past experiences, and you're like, oh, I was working from a conditioning, from a conditioning from someone else, or sure, I
Mm,
had all this inspiration from other people. I wasn't meant to act on it. So I love, Gene Keys too, because he expands so much. I have two books now. I have a small library. That's where I gather, like I look at channels and stuff like that. But his explanation of each gate, and it's so powerful. And
yeah.
it really gives practicality to it because all this knowledge, it wouldn't really serve anyone well if you don't see the practicality of using
Mm,
it in your daily lives.
yeah.
And that to me is the most powerful thing to, check myself and check my boundaries into what do I need, what am I feeling? So
Mm,
if I'm feeling frustrated, so I'm a manifesting generator, so I get the two not self of both. So I get anger and frustration.
yeah.
And also, I have some projected channels, so I get resentment too. So once I start having those feelings, it's not about shoving them out of the way.
Yeah.
There's signposts that say something is happening, and you either need to move into a different direction by doing something, or else because this is just going to stay in there. And that's when Ayurvedic, techniques, I think that's what to me that always was come to mind is how it affects the body,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know?
It's
Hmm.
like it's so like everything is so connected, and
Yes.
the way we can actually heal ourselves from like knowing where our shadows are, and that Jajinki is like the premise like of the book is like we can change our DNA because
Hmm.
as we're shifting from the shadow space to some healing version of that shadow, like I mean
Yes.
this is it, like we change our genetic. And
Yes.
after that, like I encountered like Joe Dispenza who's
Yes.
talking about the same stuff, and I'm like
Yes.
started to do his meditation and like mixing all of those tools that are all like saying the same thing. We have the power,
The
we
power.
are so freaking powerful, and when we step outside the victim mentality mindset, we can do so much. We
We
can
can
do
do so much.
so
Yes.
much, so much, so much. And I actually experienced that. Like we were talking about this earlier before we recorded. Like I got sick at one
Yes.
point in this journey, in this podcast journey, and I started to use those tools because
Hmm.
I didn't want to go to, well, anyway, I went to the hospital and they said nothing was wrong, of course,
Yes.
and I knew inside of me, like I had symptoms, like I know something
Something.
is off. Like maybe you guys cannot tell me, like in a tangible way, what is not working, but I mean, I know there's
I
something going
know.
on,
Yes.
I know my own
Exactly.
body. And
Yes.
so just by transforming the way I think, the way I go about life, the way I, just like my emotion, all of
Hmm.
that, by shifting all of that, those symptoms just went away. And those, like I still have like a few symptoms that are not related to what happened to me last fall, but even if I have symptoms right now, like I will immediately just like go to a space where I can actually shift that. This is like this can be changed,
Yes.
this can actually be changed. Like I and when like practitioners are telling us like that it's going to take years to heal stuff, for
Yeah.
me, in my perspective and in my experience, it's like not true, because when the mindset shift, when we
Yes.
understand where we're operating from, that
Oh my God.
wounded
Yes.
space,
Hmm.
we can shift it, and we can shift that very quickly.
Yeah, it really is just yeah, it's just seeing that and just kind of like, believing and going into that space. And once you start going down that road, I feel like there's just slight change that happens in you, but because all of that is connected, it's the body, the soul, the mind,
Yeah.
whereas I feel like before unschooling, I was operating from, I was seeing them just like subjects that were like separated from one another.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the way school sees like math and, language arts and whatnot. So, and they're not separated from each other. Learning is everywhere. Your body, your whole, like, your whole self, your whole spirit, it's all one. So it all
Yeah.
connects together. So it's hard to separate it because they really are not meant to be separated. So so I just love that so much. And that's kind of like the way we live, like human design for me changed me completely. And I loved it so much that I just went deeper into it. Maybe I pivot, like as a manifesting generator, I'm designed to move, to pivot from one thing to another,
Yeah.
but it's always present. It's honestly the way I make decisions, the way we travel very change the way I see
Mm.
my work as a flight attendant, when I'm at the airport. And I just love being in that space. Sometimes because I look at people, I'm like, you look like like a generator, or like I can tell there's certain people will say or do something. I'm like, oh, that's like a trait. So it's pretty fun though. I have enjoyed it a lot, and it serves as well. So I really love it. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. So,
Yes.
what would you say was the biggest change in your family after you learned about human design and unschooling and mixing all of that together? What was the biggest change for you guys?
So there has been quite a few changes. One of the biggest ones is about, as a manifesting generator, there's a lot of, we move very fast, but I think even there's obviously different parts of the chart that affect a person. So one of those is to, in my relationship with my husband, is to understand when we have something in our minds or with something, to check in with the other person to see if they're ready for it. Because once it comes out, it's like it
Mm,
comes out. So we check in with each other. We're both single definition. And honestly, with all of that, what it means is that time alone, it's important for us. Our processes are a little bit different. So we work best, we connect with each other when we have to do like
mm,
business stuff, but then
mm.
we also give each other space to be alone. I get to have that space when I'm on the road as a flight attendant on my layovers. So
Yeah.
I get to have that space. He doesn't get to have that space a lot, but so we take notes on, it's time for some, time alone. So I may just
Mm.
go out with the kids by myself, and
Yeah.
give him some space. So my husband's also a 6'2", so the two also needs a lot of space, and that it's not like in a passive type of way, but it's
Mm,
like their process to go into their next endeavor almost. It's like a recharge, and it's just like building up. So that's kind of something to look into,
mm,
from the relationship. And then for the boys, it's learning their type. um my oldest one is a generator, and then my youngest one is a manifesting generator. And what that looks like in a child, it's very fast. There's like different activities, like he may have like, we may play board games, and we may have like 5 board games in like 20 minutes, um yes. So what that looks like is that, like, they're done, they get what they need from something, and then they move on, and that is a manifesting generator. And that is also something that I had to heal, because I always felt like people were saying, you're too flaky, you have too much
mm.
going on. You're into this one day, and then I see you 2 months from now and you're into something else.
Yeah.
So, and all I wanted to do in my life, I wanted to be interested into something and just dive deeper into that. And that's just not the way I'm designed.
Yeah.
So now I take power into going into the different things that light me up and then just working from that. And now that helps me support him when he's doing from something else, you
Yeah.
know. So when he does, he does martial arts and he said he was done with it. So we're like, okay. But then he started gymnastics. So I'm not sure how long that will, that will last in
Yeah.
terms of, but however time that takes, then you're just like, okay. And then you move from it, would it be easier for me if he stayed in gymnastics like for years? Sure, it will be easier. But it really isn't about that. His journey is about also pivoting and trying new stuff. So I have to be able to support that
Mm,
and not put judgment on that he was done with martial arts and then that was it. We just moved away from it. Not
mm.
to say you should stay or why did you quit, because often we want our children to be in something and just be really good at and be consistent and have all of that, and we are not like that. So I'm like, okay. Yeah.
I love that. I see my stepdaughter so clearly. She's a manifesting generator and
Yes.
she'll do graffiti one day and the other day
Mm-hmm.
she wants to learn guitar and then the other day she wants to learn how to sing and she wants to learn how to draw animes and she wants to it's all
Yes.
like creative and
Yes.
artistic. Like I
Mm-hmm.
see that she has like this
Mm-hmm.
tendency, but she will pick up like all kinds of different stuff all the time.
Yes.
And at first, like me myself raising both my girls as projectors, they are
Projectors. Yes.
projector. And so it was like, yeah, it was an adjustment for me to just like
Yes.
actually let her explore that and make that her power, like her personal
Yes.
power,
Mhm.
to be
Yes.
able to explore that and to be able to explain that to both my other girls that like might question it because they're not like that.
Yes.
Especially my
Yes.
oldest daughter, like she will like focus on one thing only for like as long as she can.
Yes.
So,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
she will like focus
Yeah.
on that for years and years, and then she'll move on or not. But like
Yes. Not,
to
yeah.
do that like every day, like to just like shift from,
Yes.
she was like, oh my god, that's intense.
It is, it can be very intense for people, and it can be very intense. And I honestly, like, even my husband's a manifest and generator too, but he doesn't move as fast as I do. And that is one of the things that I had to learn was to inform people as to what I'm doing. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So manifest and generator,
Yeah, and the way like it can be intense
it
for
is.
people, for them
Yes.
because they're moving so quickly, but
Yes.
by understanding it, like for me, like it just like release the judgment, it release
Yes.
like expectation or like that kind of stuff. And so their relationship, my oldest daughter and my stepdaughter, they're like 9 months apart, and so they're really close together. And
Yes.
they like we took time to help both of
Yes.
them understanding each other,
Each other. Yes.
because they're not built the same way. And so it's
No.
like, let's just not spend time in like judging other people because like we're just so different. So
Yes.
let's understand each other instead and
Hmm.
like move forward with that.
Yes.
So
No. And it is definitely, I think that's the most powerful thing about it. It's like that we were able to understand each other
mm,
and not put judgment on that. And then just kind of like dive deeper, you go back into your experiences and how that shaped you, and it's just a learning process.
I actually love that. And the more I learn about manifesting generators, since I have two in my family, I just the more space they have to explore
Yes.
that, they excel at everything they're
Yes.
doing. It's like at
Yes.
first it was so confronting for my husband and I. He was like, just do it, and just do it. I'm like, what the
No.
fuck, like this I cannot, like he was teaching me at one, oh my god, that one time it was so crazy. I wanted to have a dry toilet. All right, we were
Okay.
living like in the woods and I wanted to have a dry toilet, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
you want to build one for me, please?
Yes.
And he was like, no, I'm going to teach you how to do it. And we fought so hard because he's just so good at everything. Like he's like
Yes.
an engineer in computer, and he builds stuff, and he plays hockey, and he's like into skateboarding,
I
and he's
love
like,
him.
he's doing all of those
All those
things.
things. Yes.
And he's like, it's so easy, just
Easy.
do it. And I'm
You
like, it's not freaking easy. Like, I was struggling with the freaking tools, and I was like, why don't you just freaking do it? It would be so much easier for both of
Yes,
us,
for both of us. Yes. That
Oh
is,
my
I
god.
love that. Yeah, that's such a Manny Jenny though. They are, we are just, it's just, you just do it. It's like there's the Manny Jenny, some people call it a spark. I just saw that term.
Mm.
The Manny Jenny spark, where you just like so into something and you learn, like I learned Portuguese in 6 months,
That's
so
cool.
so it's like you're just like in it, and then
Yeah.
being able to be within that spark allows for more expansion. It
Mm.
allows for more, for an openness that is
Yeah.
just so beautiful, because your aura just becomes so much brighter.
Yeah.
And by being in that space, in that lit up space, you lit up everyone else around you.
Yeah.
And when unschooling really helped me see how our aura and how our energy really shapes the way we live.
Mm.
Because when I was trying to work from that, the mom, like this is how I should be as a mom, I wasn't really fully living in alignment. So I
Mm-mm.
wasn't, I wasn't showing them what it's like to be multi-passionate. They were showing me,
Yeah.
but even my oldest was a generator. It's a little bit different for them. Um, but now, it's easier because now I know I can ask questions for them. For example, would you like burgers or hot dogs, instead of what would you like for dinner? It
Mm.
saves everyone so much time.
I know, right? It is,
Yes,
yeah. It's just like learning how to communicate with our kids. And I feel
yes,
like human design, it's just a very cool tool to
yes,
do that, because we can understand like more precisely who we're talking to and the way
yes.
we can talk to them.
And how
Yeah.
to support, and how to support,
Yeah.
how to support your person, your family, and how to support yourself, really. Because when you're a mom, and this is a little bit harder, like if you are a mom, like you said, you're a projector. My mom's a projector, and as a manifesting generator, I know that was a crucial aspect of the relationship that we had.
Mm,
And also that some of the things that I had to heal fast forward when I started doing my work,
mm, mm, mm.
because my mom couldn't keep up with me. I
Yeah.
mean, my poor mom was trying to keep up. My dad's a manifesting generator too. So it was like two people that were extremely fast, and my mom just couldn't keep up with it because
Yeah.
she isn't meant to do that,
Yeah.
and understanding that about my mom kind of helped the healing process that had to happen
Yeah.
for us. So it's been really cool though. I mean, I could talk about it for hours and hours. And I want to share with people, but not everyone's ready. And I think that's when I come, like all of my stories are projected, so they have to be invited.
Mm,
So if I am invited to share that, I love that, because I have seen how it helps people, and
yeah.
how, it adds the practicality, and the light bulbs start going off, right? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's why that was. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. And then they get to experiment. And I think that's the fun part of it. So
Yeah.
yes, I really
Yeah,
love
that's
that. So
amazing. That's
mhm,
amazing. So you
yeah.
have a blog, you have a YouTube
Mhm.
channel. Like, what else? What else do you have?
So, oh
Like,
my goodness, I have a lot of stuff, but I really, so the blog is, I think that's probably where I'm concentrating most of my energy right now,
Mm,
to keep blogging. And I have a forum that I have resources for unschooling that are more for people to kind of browse through. I feel like when you're starting, or if you have questions, it's always, the Facebook groups are always good, but there's like so many other options, because
mm-mm.
people's experiences are going to be different than your own experience. So we have the blog, we do have a YouTube channel and a podcast, but um I'm kind of like, I don't publish as consistent, but I'm totally okay with that. Um, so the blog is probably where most of my consistent work. I answer questions in the forum, for people to see if they want to, right? So there's different categories. There's like gaming and technology. I have grown unschoolers, so you can look up people that have already lived this lifestyle and see how
Mm,
that looks for them. I have stuff about human design. I do coaching, unschooling coaching, and that's a mix of unschooling and human design.
yeah.
That's really how I do that, because that's what really led to the biggest discovery for us. So I really like to start that way.
Yeah.
Um, and then I do human design readings for individuals who don't have families, who don't have children yet, so that's pretty cool.
Nice.
What else do we do? I think that's about it though, really. Like,
That's cool. That's a lot. That's
that
like
is a lot. Yes. Yes, that is a
that's
lot
very
though.
cool. That's very cool. I'll link everything in the description down below, so
Yes.
that people can reach out to you. And to end this discussion, what would be your advice for new unschooling parents?
Ah, just do it,
Mm,
honestly. It will look different for everyone. So take a moment to, to just connect with yourself and listen to your intuition. Our minds are usually very loud, but if we kind of, go into a quiet corner and ask yourself, do I want to go into this journey? I
mm,
can almost guarantee you that your authority, your intuition, your spleen is going to be like, yes. Is it scary? Yes, absolutely. Without a doubt. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Will it change your life dramatically? Will you have to dive into shadow work, into healing that you knew you needed, but you haven't been able to do it or haven't wanted to do it? Yes, without a doubt. Your children deserve the best version of yourself, and you deserve the best version of yourself. So just go for it.
yeah,
That's
I
it.
love that. I love
Yes.
that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Julieta. It was a pleasure, like always, to talk with you.
Yes, absolutely. Always such a pleasure to talk to you as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to reach out to Julieta, our links are all listed in the description down below. So if you have questions about unschooling, she's open to discussion around the subject. And if you are curious about human design, her approach is very good. So if you want to reach out to her, please feel free. Her links are all down in the description down below. I wish you an amazing rest of your week. Take care of yourself and create as much as you can. See you soon.